Hai Sobat Samuel, berikut ini kami tunjukkan cara berinvestasi menggunakan aplikasi Star Mobile. Caranya sangat praktis dan tentunya mudah. Mari kita simak bersama-sama. Pertama-tama, unduh atau download aplikasi Star pada smartphone Anda. Tentu saja bisa melalui Google Play Store untuk Android dan juga App Store untuk iPhone. Setelah terdownload, buka aplikasi Star dan kemudian klik register online. Untuk saat ini, registrasi online hanya untuk WNI yang sudah memiliki IKTP saja ya. Lalu Sobat Samuel dapat melengkapi data-data pribadi Anda sesuai dengan IKTP tersebut. Dalam proses pembukaan rekening online ini, Sobat Samuel dapat memilih untuk menggunakan rekening dana nasabah atau RDN di BCA atau BRI, sesuai dengan rekening bank yang sudah Anda miliki. Untuk pemilik rekening bank lain, Anda dapat membuka rekening Star Samuel Sekuritas melalui website atau offline. Untuk kode referral, Sobat Samuel bisa mengisinya dengan nama teman atau kerabat yang menyarankan aplikasi Star kepada Anda. Kalau tidak ada yang menyarankan atau merefer, kode tersebut dapat dikosongkan saja. Setelah mengisi data nomor telepon dan juga email, kode OTP akan otomatis dikirimkan ke email Anda, sehingga Anda perlu memasukkan kode OTP yang tertera pada email tersebut di aplikasi Star. Setelah melakukan verifikasi OTP tersebut, Sobat Samuel dapat melanjutkan mengisi data diri sesuai dengan IKTP. Oh iya, Sobat Samuel yang belum memiliki NPWP masih tetap dapat membuka rekening Star dengan cara mengisinya di kolom NPWP dengan angka 0, yaitu sebanyak 15 kali. Selesai melengkapi data pribadi, pilih upload dokumen di menu bar bawah, kemudian upload foto IKTP, foto Anda bersama IKTP, dan juga foto tanda tangan Anda di atas kertas putih polos ya. Setelah semua data diinput, tunggu proses verifikasi data dan pengaktifan akun serta RDN dengan waktu tunggu maksimal 1 kali 24 jam ya selama hari kerja. Jika waktu tunggu tersebut terlewat, Sobat Samuel dapat mengecek email secara berkala karena kemungkinan ada kekurangan data atau ada kesalahan upload dokumen. Tentunya, tim Star Samuel Sekuritas akan menghubungi Anda terkait kekurangan data atau ada kesalahan proses melalui email atau telepon. Jika data sudah diverifikasi dan lengkap, registrasi akan diproses yang ditandai dengan adanya email pre-activation, berisikan client code dan juga password login. Dengan memasukkan keduanya di login akun, Anda sudah bisa melihat market info di aplikasi Star. Namun, untuk mulai melakukan trading, Sobat Samuel harus menunggu proses pembuatan RDN atau rekening dana nasabah. Setelah proses pembuatan RDN selesai, akan ada email masuk, dan Anda harus transfer ke nomor rekening yang sudah tertera di email ya Sobat semua, sebagai syarat pengaktifan rekening tersebut. Anda bisa transfer dengan jumlah berapapun, karena kami tidak membatasi jumlah minimal untuk pengaktifan rekeningnya. Setelah deposit berhasil, tunggu email selanjutnya ya, untuk mendapatkan PIN trading. Dan setelah mendapatkan PIN trading, maka Sobat Samuel bisa langsung mulai ikut trading di aplikasi Star. Bagaimana? Mudah dan cepat kan? Selamat mulai perjalanan investasi ya Sobat Samuel bersama Star. Jangan lupa ya untuk follow YouTube, Instagram, Clubhouse, dan Telegram kita untuk tidak ketinggalan berbagai update dari Samuel Sekuritas Indonesia. Salam cuan!
Selamat siang and welcome for all the attendees to join our webinar today, webinar by Samuel Sekuritas Indonesia. Today we have the opportunity to talk about Bumi resources, and we have a wonderful moderator. We join us today here from Bumi Resources is Pak Dileep, will follow by technical analysis by Pak Andry. We'll talk about what is the outlook for Bumi resources at this point as well as in the future, especially given a high coal price condition at this point. So all the investor right now is really anticipating what is the future will look like for Bumi resources. A little bit brief information about our for Pak Dileep. He is right now currently serving as a board of director in Bumi Resources, as well as corporate secretary, and who's joining the group since 1997. And he previously held a MBA in Indian Institute of Management from India. And the rundown of this webinar, we're gonna start with a brief company video from Bumi Resources, then followed by company presentations led by Pak Dileep, and we're gonna followed by a Q&A, as well as technical analysis by Pak Andry. Okay, without further ado, thank you, and I let Bumi to lead the video company profile. Go ahead.
Believing without question, without doubt. It's what connects us to our land, our homes. It's when fear becomes reverence and the unknown becomes a way of life. When traditions become hope, and loss and gain are united. You then begin to see things connect, and it changes the way you think and look at solutions. Things back the way you found them, maybe even better than the way you found them. But first, you have to believe. Bumi Resources, what do you value?
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, Pak Dileep. How are you, Pak? Thank you for joining us today. I think we're gonna followed by company presentations led by you, Pak. Go ahead, Pak Dileep. I think you're still on mute, Pak. Yeah, okay.
I said thank you very much. Well, thank you very much. I'd like to thank Ibu Meming. I'd like to thank you all for this opportunity to reintroduce Bumi Resources. We have about 67 participants. So we'd be very happy to share our journey forward over the last 20 or 30 years. Now, most of us are familiar with Bumi. So I will not spend too much time on the basics, but I will flip through where we are, and I'll try and leave as much time as possible for questions and answers. There appears to be a technical glitch, so let's try and sort it out. Here is the agenda of what is proposed in the presentation. Now, there are several slides, so I won't spend too much of time on each slide, but just point out the main points. Now, as most of us are aware, we are the largest coal exporters in the world. KPC is the largest coal mine in the world, which is open cut. We have a significant share of Indonesian coal production. We supply a fair amount of share to PLN, and that's our priority customer. Now we are in the region of around 80 million tons, in 2020 and 21. We hope to scale that up in 2022. We have enough marketable coal reserves to last us for the next 20 or 30 years without really exploring more. KPC is only partially explored and it has received its IUPK status. So has Arutmi. Now, KPC was a mine which we purchased from BHP and Rio Tinto, from Rio Tinto and BP in 2003, and Arutmi we purchased in 2001 from BHP. Now, all our mines are located very close to the sea, so that makes it ideal for loadouts and costs, so we can serve all important markets throughout Asia and Europe from our own dedicated ports. We have our own captive facilities to process. We have our own infrastructure. We have our own deep sea ports. We have our own power plants, and it gives us an unmatched cost competitive advantage. We've segmented our businesses into two areas. One is the basic fossil fuels, which is coal. KPC and Arutmi are the main ones. The other two are the marketing arms. We have an oil concession in Yemen, but this is hardly a country that we can do much work in right now. We have a stake in Dharma Henva, a mining contractor, and we also own another third generation coal contractor work, which is Pendopo in Sumatra, which has clean, low-ranked coal, which is good for captive plants. On the right side is a listed company that we catalyzed to list in 2010, that is Bumi Resource Minerals. Again, I don't think very many of you would be strangers to this company. Over the years, Bumi has bought copper and gold interests of Rio Tinto and BHP in Sulawesi, in Palu, as well as in Gorontalo. And in 2008, we also acquired Herald Resources, and that's the Dairy Prima Minerals property, which plans to produce zinc starting in about 2 years' time. It's a listed company, and I think it has been doing well recently with the startup of its coal production. So we expect that to be a non-coal contributor to Bumi as we go forward. Here's how the coal production has moved since the time we bought over Arutmi in 2001. From 23 million tons in 2003 from both the mines. Today we are at a level of 85 million tons. But organically, we can do 90 or 95, and Pendopo we can do another 7 or 8 when it starts up. We do not have plans to invest further in coal capacity at this stage. But we are planning to go downstream, coal downstream into projects. So we have a project in KPC to produce methanol. And we are looking at a similar opportunity in Arutmin, and we are looking at various green and blue and energy projects, whether it is ammonia, whether it is hydrogen, whether it is solar, all those we are actually looking at very actively and conducting feasibilities. As I told you, our reserves are tremendous, and we can cater to national and international requirements very easily for the next 20, 30 years without significant capex spends. And we are only partially explored. Now, as the video has shown, and it's a very moving video, but it depicts what is the DNA of Bumi and KPC and Arutmin. ESG, governance, CSR, greening, carbon footprint, reclamation, emission reduction, controls, anti-dust, anti-pollution, looking after our own people, looking after welfare, looking after making sure that people have alternate career opportunities even when we stop mining coal. All those are very much part of Bumi's focus, and we spend a lot of time, a lot of resource in this activity. And this we can demonstrate and prove over the last 30 years, and we are building on that. Now, we have won the Green Elite Award. We have won the Top Platinum Award for CSR. We have won ESG Disclosure Awards. In fact, globally, we would be one on the top for transparent disclosure on almost every parameter. We've been recognized by international, local, and government organizations, internationally and locally. We have the SDG awards, also the Special Sustainable Development Goals. We've got awards for sustainable mining, the way we do our technical operations, the way we manage our safety, the way we look after our operations and our site. UNDP and the Human Rights Commission ranks Bumi on A+ on top sustainability for reporting. It's won the top company awards. It is one of the companies recognized on the exchange as well. In the IICD award category for ratings in our group. Now, both Arutmin and KPC have earned at least 19 or 20 awards from the Ministry of Minerals and Resources. We've got the GRC awards for sustainable growth. And Bumi has also won the highest Sukanto award. Bumi also contributes the largest royalty to the government. In fact, if we take Bumi and we compare it with the second largest company, the third largest company, the fourth largest company in Indonesia, Bumi pays more royalty to the government than all these three companies put together. And it pays more than 3 or 4 times, by 3 or 4 times than Freeport. So actually, it's a huge contributor to the national economy and is categorized as a national vital project, which has the protection of the government to ensure that its production is kept normal. Safety, you can see that we were producing about, in Arutmin, 10 million tons when we bought the asset. We are now producing capable of producing 25 to 30 million tons. But the safety record, actually, even though production has gone up 3 or 4 times, both in Arutmin and KPC, the lost time injury frequency rates have dropped significantly. In fact, we would be global leaders on our safety record. But we have not published our audited full year numbers as yet for 2021. We are in the process of closing our accounts. And if we are able to finish everything on time, we hope we can publish it by the end of the month. So I won't go through the full 9 months operational highlights in detail, but I'll just flip you through it so that you understand how we account. Operationally, this is what we have done. From Q3, we've had more rains than usual. It's flowed into Q4. It's flowing into Q1 of this year and is likely to flow through into April and May as well. So this gives you our operational highlights for KPC, Arutmin, and if we put them together. Now, as you read before in an earlier chart, we had done 81 million tons in 2020. In 2021, though our numbers are not out yet, we should be in the region of 78 to 80 million tons. We were impacted by rain. And when we are looking at 2022, we have guided a figure of 85 to 90, but La Nina has had its effect on output in Q1. It is continuing to show heavy rainfall in April, and which is forecast to continue up to May. So we think we will be in the lower band at this stage between 83 and 85 million tons, but still higher than last year. We are doing our level best that as soon as we have better weather in between the rainy periods, we are trying to maximize our. As company policy, we respect national policy. We respect the DMO and we respect government regulation with regard to their national priorities. And we accord the highest priority to domestic sales, particularly to PLN. We supply about 30% of what we produce domestically, and that is given the highest priority. Once that is supplied, it is then that we export. So we give domestic the highest priority. And that's actually been so from January in particular, once the export bans came into effect. We've actually met all our obligations and we ensure that we give them the highest priority, particularly when rain has been impacting our production. So exports have got a little deferred, but we hope we can make up from May onwards. Now, rainfalls flowed through into three that impacted mining. It continues now, right up to Q1. Production costs have increased, and you've seen where fuel is going. And to give you an example of how costs are moving, every $10 increase in the price of oil per barrel means an extra production cash cost of $1 per ton to the company. So whereas the coal price was 50 or oil price was 50 or $60 per barrel just about 3 or 4 months ago, now it is running at 100, 110. So you can see that our production cash costs would be rising by a factor of $4 or $5 per ton. So while coal prices are rising, so are the oil prices. So I think there's a bit of balancing going on between revenue and cost. But we are still far ahead, actually, because of the coal price. Now, here's how the prices have moved since September till September 21. Now, when we look at the end of 21, we should be in the mid-60s on an average. But when we are looking at Q1 of this year, I think Q1 of this year, we would be at a level which is, I would say, in the region of certainly not 60 or 65, but every month from January to March, we have seen increases. Essentially, I think we are looking at what we have guided on volume is 85 to 90. So we are in the lower band on price. We could be looking at 80. We could be looking at 90. We could be looking at 100. It merely depends on the mix. And as we ramp up production, we can be surer. But as I said before, 70% of what we produce is exported. So which is at the international price adjusted for quality. 30% is at the controlled price, which is $70 pegged, and then adjusted for quality. So when we are looking at full revenue, while the full revenue is likely to increase, maybe by 50% or 60% this year, so will now royalty. Royalty will also increase from, we are the largest royalty payer, where from $900 million to $1 billion that we paid last year. I think this year it can be almost double that, if we are looking at KPC and ROP. So I'm just giving you an idea, but as I said before, revenue increase is running ahead of costs at this point of time. But should the prices fall over the medium term, it's unlikely they'll fall this year or next year by any significant sum. The forward curve suggests that the prices will remain strong this year, certainly. And by next year, it should still be touching a low of around 150 to 200. And over the medium term, they should remain at levels of around 150, 160. That's our take. And the reason why Bumi thinks that will be so is because there is no capacity increase in coal globally that we see in the medium term. And the reason for that is really the green hysteria, the emphasis on renewables, and institutions and banks not funding coal capacities or coal-related projects. So as a result, even before the Ukraine crisis, we saw a winter where US ran short of energy. There was a global energy crisis. UK ran short of feedstock, so they reverted to coal again, although they are into renewables. Germany and France could not get enough of renewables, and they switched to coal. Japan had a similar problem. China had a similar problem. India had a similar problem. But the problem in Indonesia, why they couldn't really take full advantage of that, is because of the heavy rains, which restricted output. And then from January has been the emphasis on DMO. And the export ban didn't help very much when exports were restricted for about 2 or 3 weeks. The point I'm basically making is that we would see coal as stable and reliable over the medium term. Our personal view is it will remain till 2050, 60 at least, because there's no real one-to-one replacement at the same cost and ease. Renewables will continue to pose a problem until they stabilize, but even if they stabilize, they can do about 20, 25% of the replacement, which is the incremental demand for power, can maybe be met by renewables to an extent. But the base demand for power, which uses coal, that base might remain, particularly in Asia. And Indonesia is using coal for its downstream projects, so the local demand here is going to increase. Capacity may not increase for reasons that I've explained. Hence, export availability will come down over the medium term. The world will require more coal because renewables cannot make up for it. And therefore, the coal prices are likely to remain high as far as we can see. Now, that's a very simple demand equation, supply equation, which I'm putting forward to you. And I've made my comments in international forums that actually what is required is an orderly transition, a responsible transition from to cleaner energy. It cannot be done overnight. One cannot say stop coal today and rely on replacement feedstock, because that is totally unreliable. It cannot be stored. And if you have to store it, you've got to mine more and more of metals, which again is polluting. So it's got to be done in a very orderly way. They should coexist. And I think renewables can share in part of the power demand. But the base demand basically just has to be coal. Maybe it can be nuclear to those countries who can do it. Maybe hydro, but that's weather related. So basically the fallback will be on the traditional feedstocks. And I think it is important to note that oil reserves in the world will last up to 2047. When it comes to gas, they will last up to 2050 or 2055. Then it will take another 100 million years for new coal, for new oil, and for new gas to be produced. So basically, the world has 30, 40 years to find a replacement for oil, to find a replacement for gas. Coal can continue for the next 100 years. But as easier coal reserves get depleted, you have to go deeper and deeper. So that's going to raise the cost of producing coal. So automatically, the output will become less. So we see a growth in coal or a continuation of coal till at least 2070 or 2060. And that's what is Indonesia's plan as well, stated in COP26 and thereafter. India has also said 2070. I think it's possible to accelerate, but as our Minister of Finance said, the developed world needs to fund the move to renewables because they've got their industrial growth through fossil fuels. So they have to take responsibility for funding, the accelerating the move to funding renewables. And if they can't do it, developing countries have to still reach and attain their economic growth and for the livelihood and the prosperity of their people. Poverty has got to be ridden. Standards of living have got to go up. All those kind of things have to happen. And for that, traditional feedstock, like coal, which Indonesia has enough of, that is the one that is being mobilized. And I really wish to commend the government with regard to their foresight in going in for coal downstream projects and giving the time, attention, energy, resource, and attention to green and cleaner energies. Now, those are good developments. Now, having said all this, let me go back to where we started. This is on the cost. The cost can go up. I already told you can go up by $4, $5, $6 because of oil. And if oil goes up, coal goes up. I mean, that's been the linkage over the last 30, 40 years. Although there's no real correlation. Here are the cash cost of goods sold. The breakup is there by the overburden removed, the strip ratios. Basically, as you go deeper to get the coal, your costs go up. And as you have to remove overburden to longer areas, your cost of transportation of the overburden goes up. And that means a further increase in fuel consumption. And that means increasing costs. So the closer you are to the port, like Bumi, the more advantaged you are. Now, this is how we account. Basically, we account on PSAK 66. We only consolidate BRMS and Arutmi. We do not consolidate KPC because PSAK 66 does not allow us to consolidate KPC. We only equity account it. That is because there is a watertight shareholder agreement between CIC, Tata Power, and ourselves. So under the IFRS guidelines, we cannot consolidate KPC, so we equity account it. So here you're only seeing for 9 months Arutmin and BRMS. You're not seeing KPC, which is there in what you call in the bottom line. Now here's how we look at September 21 versus September 20. What we've done for the benefit of investors such as yourselves, Samuel, and everybody, is that we've consolidated KPC, we've consolidated Arutmin, so you can do an apple-to-apple comparison whenever the Samuel analyst thinks that it is worthwhile to cover Bumi. Now, here's comparing standards. That if you look at September 21 on the left side, we've consolidated 9 months of KPC and Arutmin and BRMS. And if you look at the second column, current reporting standards, KPC is removed. So from the revenue of consolidated, if you deduct 666, you get the KPC revenue. We are now net equity positive. And in a nutshell, we turned the corner in September 21. We had made a non-cash loss, which was a significant loss of $338 million in 2020. And you can see that we've turned around to a net income for the 9 months of $64 million, which is a positive swing. September 21 versus September 20 of $201 million on net income, despite paying roughly $150 million of interest on the loans that we have. Now, if we are looking at full year 21, I think full year 21, we would record the highest ever revenue that Bumi has earned. It is likely to cross $5 billion. And what this basically means that with BRMS also contributing, and with our mix having improved, and with export being the priority in Q4 last year whenever we could, and with prices rising, as I mentioned to you, India had floods in Q3 last year, their demand went up. And in winter, I think the whole world had an energy crisis. Renewables couldn't match, so everyone wanted coal. And the prices just kept shooting up, largely because of China. So all that benefits, and when we look at our price for full year 21, it'll be significantly higher. I don't quite remember that number, but it should be in the region of $68 to $70 versus what we had done in the previous year, which was more like $44, $45. Now, here's on EBITDA. We've been able to repay more debt in 2021. And you'll be very happy to know, I mean, when I come to the debt restructuring, I can tell you, we've accelerated debt repayment. And by 2022, we expect tranche A to be fully paid by July or by October. We expect to start paying tranche B. And we are in the process of restructuring. So we are talking to our lenders to reduce the interest and extend the timeline. We think that we will be by 2024, we should have settled tranche B. And we should have also taken out all the mandatory convertible bonds. So all that we would be left with is tranche C, which is the CDB loan. And we think that as we repay more and more principal, the interest burden comes down, and we are able to repay more principal as a result. We can even accelerate the CDB debt payment. We are in, at the moment, dialogue with them on what we can do better, how we can accelerate tranche B, and how we can move tranche C forward. Because in this present period of high coal prices, we believe that we should be in a position to balance our capital structure to below 1-to-1 debt to equity over the next 2 or 3 years. EBITDA generation will improve significantly in 2022. I know that some other coal companies prior to the royalty announcement had announced their expectations. But we believe that as the largest producer, and as our volumes and outputs go up, our fully consolidated EBITDA should be significant. And we should be in a position to repay debt to the extent of $400, $500, maybe $600 million a year. That will really depend on the coal prices. This is just to give you an idea on Bumi. Bumi is the one which has the debt. Our units don't have the debt. Now here's our debt position. So as I said, tranche A will disappear by July or August or September or October. Tranche B should disappear by 2023-24. I think much of 2023 will take up tranche B. And tranche C is the one that remains. That will be taken over in 2024-25. And they should be out by then as well. And the mandatory convertible bonds will disappear in the end of December 2024. And that's a debt to equity, a bond to equity. Already about half have already been converted at 80 rupiah and 73 rupiah. Some even at 100 and 200 and 1,000. So we are hoping that we can even accelerate that process before 2024. And basically, this is going to improve the capital structure of the company. The interest cost will come down. Now, prior to our 2017 restructuring, we had a total debt of $4.3 billion. So in 2017, when we restructured, we restructured $2.6 billion of debt. So basically, we were left with just about $1.8 billion of tranche A, tranche B, and tranche C. And then we had done our debt for equity, if you all recall, at 926 rupiah per share. Now, that conversion was done in sometime in 2017. So our outstanding shares before the restructuring from 36.6 billion shares went up to 65.5. And now with the mandatory convertible bonds having been slowly converted, our current outstanding shares are 115.6 billion. And we are also converting more bonds into equity over April and May. So that will take care of another 12 or 13 billion shares, by which time the total outstanding shares will go up to 129 billion, compared with 36.6 billion before the restructuring, 65.5 billion when we converted our debt to shares at 926 rupiah per share. And then the other bonds that have been converted have been anywhere between 1,200 rupiah per share, right down to 73, but right now it is currently at 80, versus the current share price, which is around about 60. So we are trying to optimize and balance our capital structure as optimally and as early in an accelerated fashion as we can, because our effort is now to get invested into the greener, the bluer, the cleaner energy, the solar, the downstream projects, where we wish to now turn our company's attention towards. And separately, we are catalyzing value creation for BRMS as the controlling shareholder. And we are also trying to work in Dharma Henva to see how they can improve their performance. As I mentioned before, ESG reporting, this is just a snapshot. These are the data that we report. And we have very detailed data available. In fact, it's even more than required standards. And we comply internationally with almost every requirement. And we do it voluntarily. And this is on sales. I won't bore you through the sales. I think our major markets are Asia. They were earlier Europe, but Europe is again showing interest again. But we don't have coal to offer. We are prioritizing domestic, and whatever is left, we are trying to service existing contracts. As we improve production, as rains become better, maybe we can turn towards Europe as well. Coal prices are going up. They are currently running at levels of around 300. And I think by the end, forward curve suggests they'll remain around 200, in the range of 200, 300 for 2 years at least, if not more. So present, I've told you, is $300. Here's our shareholders. This is as of September last year, but now the numbers have changed. CIC has about 13%, and we have other shareholders and lenders who have the rest, and then the public. Bakri has about 20-25%, but they hope to raise that. This is on how we do our governance. We have KPMG as a monitoring accountant. And this is on governance. I'll let you read that. I mean, there's no need to belabor the point. We are extremely good at all this. Here's the management. You have Pa Chichip, who was a former minister, and they are largely independent directors. The last two are CIC. Benjamin Bao, he's commissioner. Jinping Ma, he's also involved in BRMS on the dairy project for zinc. Tom, who represents lenders. And Mr. Andra Bakri, that's part of the family, the Bakri family. So they are very much involved in the company, along with Aga, who's the president director, as you will see on the next page. Aga is the president director, so there's a direct interest of the family in the company in making it prosper, grow, expand, and into greener and uncharted areas. The bottom line is largely the CIC and the CDB nominees. On the board, we have a projects addition, and we have a marketing addition, and we have an operations addition, and the rest you've seen before. That's what I have. If there are questions, if there are answers, I'd be happy to take them. Maybe I've taken too much of your time. I had planned to take 10 or 15 minutes, but I'm told I've taken more. Maybe I've covered some of the answers already in the queues that you might have.
Yeah, thank you, Pak Dileep. Well, what excellent presentations and very insightful. And as we can see, there's a lot of questions already. To save time, perhaps I'm going to quickly run through a couple of interesting questions from the attendants. First, I think Pak Andry will share his statistical view of Bumi. What is it going to be look like at this point? Go ahead, Pak Andry.
Okay, thank you, Nyoman and Pak Dileep. Very comprehensive explanation. I guess the Bumi is shining in the future. Okay, let me share my analysis. Today, the price went up a little bit from 60 to 64, but end up close at 63. And as you can see, there's a downtrend channel in the midterm of technical analysis, but in the short term, the price is started to increase from 50 to 73. But I make a projection here. I think it's equivalent to our research also, it's very possible with the good outlook from Mr. Dileep, the price of Bumi is very possible to reach even 100 to 127 here, as you can see on my chart. And I also want to share a bit of peer comparison here. So as you can see, I take this one 2 days ago, but it's still not much different. As you can see on the very top is the coal price. I think Pak Dileep already mentioned around 300. And but I put the relative comparison here in terms of the percentage increase. So as you can see, this is within 1 year period. Adaro increased by 180%, and then Harum is around 157%. There's also ITMG, Indi, PTBA, and then Bumi at the very bottom. Well, we hope that Bumi also can pass all of these peers company, Dileep, and I believe so. 100 is very possible number for Bumi, right? So we still have around 30 to 40% increase, I think, at least for year of 22. And then let's see. Oh yeah, also let me share the 1 second. Coal and you can see oil since 2009. Let me share the one 20 years movement. Second. Here you go. Yeah. As you can see, this is the movement of oil since 1984. I can pull around 20 years. And then coal, I can only get around 2009 to 2022. But at least you can get the idea, the movement of correlation of coal and oil is pretty much almost the same. So that's pretty much to wrap up, I think, from me, Pak Nyoman, Pak Dileep. So I think Bumi price right now is 60, 63. It's quite cheap, I think. Has the possibility to increase up to 100, even 120. And as you can see, the explanation of Mr. Dileep, I think it's quite relevant to it. Okay, thank you. Nyoman, that's from me, from the
Thank you, Mas
technical
Andry,
side.
for the outlook of the technical, from the technical perspective. Pak Dileep, let me start the Q&A sessions. Maybe I'm gonna combine a couple of questions that's similar. First of all, maybe perhaps the related to government regulations. What is your view, Pak, in related to the coal-related tariff for Bumi? This is from Pak Budianto, as well as from Pak Andrew. Can you explain us in relates to the DMO regulation of the government, Pak? What are we gonna impact the production or the sales volume of Bumi? Go ahead.
You see, my understanding of the DMO is the same as your understanding.
Okay.
And my understanding of PP15 is the same as your understanding. This is something which is not new. It has been expected for quite some time.
Yeah.
Now, Arutmin received its IUPK status in November 2020. We have been hoping since then there would be clarity on royalty.
Okay.
KPC received its IUPK status from 1st January of this year.
January of this year.
Between
Okay.
January and now, the news has been that it is expected.
I see.
So it does not truly come as a surprise. And if I read the various media reports from last year and this year, I have found that various media agencies have been reporting various numbers for what royalty will be. Some have guessed it rightly, some have guessed it wrong. Now, all right, let's start on the DMO. The DMO has been around for over 10 or 12 years. It's nothing new. And we've always, in our computation, take into account that the number is 25%. But what has happened over previous years is that while there is a domestic demand at the beginning of the year, which is laid down, there it has not been possible. The demand, really, the deliveries and the orders have not matched the forecast demand. As a result, in the absence of proper lifting, many coal companies have been unable actually to supply 25, and the authorities have looked the other way in that regard. But what has happened during the energy crisis of Q4 is that the world has woken up that while we've been talking about renewables taking over and not investing in coal and traditional fossil fuel feedstock, and with gas prices hitting the roof, making it unaffordable in many countries, and with the geopolitical issues, that were rumored to be starting, with Russia making noises with regard to East Europe, although it had not started, but I think the fears were already there. There were already fears that Russia could shut off the gas if they wanted to. So all that has contributed in many ways. One is the energy crisis. The second is the floods in India in Q3. Then is the problems in winter in the US, Germany, France, Britain, who went back to coal, Japan, China, India, everywhere. Coal became the favored item. Most unfortunately, weather was not kind right from the second half of 2021. Australia had its fair share of rainfall as well as transportation related and weather issues. South Africa was unable to do it. South America had labor issues. And America was switching off coal. So in the absence of any new supply, there was no way in which this demand could be made up. Now, spot prices rise, and it's a function of supply demand. Now, the spot quantities that you saw were maybe a Panamax here and a Panamax there. They were not really 5 million tons or 2 million tons or 5 million tons going out to meet those demands. As a result, the shortage compounded and the prices kept shooting up. Now, when they were beginning to stabilize in January and early February, from levels of 250 going up to 400 and then back to 300 and then 250 and then 200. Then the Ukraine issue started, and again, it spiked it sky high. Now, the problem is Russia provides 60 or 70 million tons of coal to Europe, Japan, to Korea. All of them are now saying that we need it. They also have special specifications which cannot be complied with. The problem is that in Indonesia, there's very little of high-ranked coal available of the quality they want. We have a lot of the low-ranked and medium-ranked quality. So then the natural market is really Australia and South Africa. But those are very difficult because they are also having their own set of problems. China had an issue with Australia. I think that issue continues. So they had already, what you call, diverted supplies to other countries against which they had contracts. So there is no way in which the fresh demand can be met. Now, I keep hearing that a Panamax has gone to Europe or we have supplied something to Italy and this and that, but that's not going to solve any problem. Ukraine also produces coal. Now, that coal is not available for domestic in Ukraine as they rebuild after the war. Now, I'm told that Russia is contracting its production because of sanctions. They cannot export anymore. And Australia, for the last 1 month, has been having floods and high waves. So there's a vessel queue of 35 or 40 waiting to be exported. Now, in this kind of scenario, this 300 level that we mentioned on spot can spike. And if you look at the forward curves right up to the end of 2023 are looking to be in the range of 200 going up to 300. And that's a reflector of market. So what is Bumi's response to all this? Our response is actually pretty balanced. First, national priority. We must supply PLN, keep the nation supplied with power. Second, if cement and fertilizers need coal, we will give them coal. And thereafter, whatever we have left for export, we will supply to the export market against existing contracts. Once the existing contracts are fulfilled, we can go as we increase output to new markets.
Okay.
In that period, I'm afraid the price is going to continue remaining high because most companies in Indonesia will be facing the same problem. If they don't supply domestically, they'll be in trouble.
Interesting, Pak. Interesting, especially when you mentioned about Russia, and that's reflected on high coal price at this point. And you also mentioned that in the near term, Bumi sees the ASPs reach up into $150 per ton, as well as normalizing in 100. So that you can expect in 2022, Pak, and as well as, and how much is the
That's
cost?
our view, but if you're looking at analysts and all that, they're very conservative people.
Right.
Some of them feel it can be 100, some of them feel they can be 80. But if they try doing forward contracts at those prices for 2023, I don't think they will get a single contract at that price.
Yeah. How about the cash cost of Bumi, Pak, in next year, in this year especially?
You see, this year I showed you the chart that we were running around $35. Okay. That excludes royalty.
Okay.
I mean, it's just a production cash cost.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as I said, if the oil remains at 100 or 110, our cost will go up by $4 or $5.
Okay.
So the cost can go up from 35 to 40, but the price from 60 to 70 can go up to 90 or 100 or 105, 110 on an average.
Okay. So expecting a huge margin this year, and especially a healthy margin.
I would say it won't be unreasonable. I told you that last year in 2021, we would have hit a record revenue of above $5 billion. I wouldn't be surprised at all that if the coal price is sustained, that this year the gross revenue on 100% KPC and 100% ROCMIN basis, if it crosses $8 billion. So like I said, revenue is moving at a faster pace than the cost. If the oil is going up. But the royalty factor needs to be factored in. As I mentioned in my presentation, that if we are the highest royalty payer, in the past we have paid 9 trillion, 10 trillion. But if we are looking at, let's say, an output of 83 million tons, and if you take 70% for exports at 28% royalty, and then you take 30% at 14% royalty. So the domestic at 70, adjusted for quality, will be $45 to $50. 25% of or 30% of your domestic, which is 22, 23 million tons. So it would be roughly about maybe 150 to $200 million on domestic, at 14%. But 28% will be on exports. So then, what was a total 9 trillion for domestic and export will now become more or less roughly roughly about 25 trillion to 30 trillion by way of royalties to the government. Yes, there is a relief on corporate tax where 45% comes down to 22, but there's also a 10% net income payable to the local government, provincial government, and the central government. So there would be definitely a cost impact. At current prices, it can be borne. But as prices fall, I think the impact would be there because they haven't thought of a scenario where if the coal price drops below 70, what happens? Supposing it becomes 60 or 50 like it happened in 2016. An unlikely scenario, but...
Okay, thank you very much, Pak Dileep. Okay, next questions. I think we're going to touch base a bit about the leverage position of Bumi, as you already mentioned, that the management is committed to settle all its deleveraging its debt positions, starting from tranche A and till tranche C, as well as the convertible bonds up to 2025. And maybe we've got a question about within the converted MCBs, but how much is the management expect to be converted again this year, and at what price?
You mean the mandatory convertible bonds?
Yes.
Up to the 11th of December 2022, the conversion price is fixed at 80 rupiah. Then from 12th of December 2022, there's a formula, which is to take the 6 months previous weighted, volume weighted average price for the previous 6 months trading days, and you add a 25% premium on that. So let's say that that number is 63 or 64, like you said. So you add 25% to 64.
Okay.
That will then become the conversion price, which will be closer to, again, 80 or something.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Pak. Again, we're gonna touch base again on the conversation on the extension of permits on Arutmin as well as KPC. And thus, on the extension of the permit, is there any reduction of the land operating areas?
Yes. I mean, let's put it this way, that we've had these concessions for over 30 years. And over 30 years, we have probably exploited 60 or 70% of the area in Arutmin. And we probably exploited 50 or 55% in KPC. So over the years, we have been relinquishing land. So it's nothing new. So while land has been relinquished, but we are sticking to our production and output numbers because the productive areas and the infrastructure is still with us.
Okay, I see. Okay, next questions, Pak. We touched base about the contractors and logistic partners. Currently, Bumi already engaged in various strategic partners, and specifically in contractors and logistic. Can you tell us a bit more about who is the largest contractor and logistic partner, and what are the future projects with them? Go ahead.
Are you referring to coal or non-coal?
I think coal.
Well, I think for the last 30 years, who our contractors are pretty well known. Now, I'm trying to recollect. When it's KPC, the heavy duty areas, which is the high strip area, ratio areas, which is the high ranked coal areas, we mine ourselves.
I see.
It is the medium duty or the surface mining areas, the low ranked coal areas is where we have mining operators. So Arutmin is 70-80% of low-ranked coal. So their entire area is through operators. Now, whether it is Pama, whether it is Dharma Henva, and there are 3 or 4 others, they are there. Now, when it comes to KBC, it is Pama, Dharma Henva largely, and we ourselves, we do captive mining. So we do all the 300-ton, 360-ton work, on trucks and excavators. Now, operators are doing the 100 tons and the 120 tons and the 160 tons. And we have a control over costs in the sense we know what we do on the 300-ton vessels, on the equipment that we have. So we are able to maintain, what you call a cross-analysis of how efficient the operators are performing. And that's one of our key areas now with the new royalty structure and the pressure that is now imposed on costs. We are looking across the board at every cost. And we have now formulated a plan of how we can reduce costs by 200 to 300 million tons in KPC and maybe another 100 million tons in Arutmin. And that is one way of making up through efficiencies, from quite apart from the higher coal prices and quite apart from contributions from BRMS and maybe Dharma.
Okay,
We also
thank you, Pak.
McKinsey in the past to help us in reducing costs. So we have learned a lot over the years.
Okay. Right now, we already passed 5 o'clock, Pak. If you don't mind to answer 1 or 3 questions again, Pak?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as many as you like.
Yeah. Okay. One question, it relates to the future outlook of Bumi, Pak. Because most of the coal companies, the trend is they're moving into green energy initiatives, Pak. Is there any future plan of Bumi, Pak, to move towards that?
Well, I think we have been rather reticent on making our announcements public unless they are absolutely firm and sure. But the 2 IUPKs specify that we have to have a coal downstream project.
I see. Okay.
For KPC, it has to be operative by 2026, and for Arutmin, it has to be operated by 2024 or 25. So KPC is already announced for the 1.8 million tons of methanol. Collaboration with Air Products and Ithaca.
Okay.
And
all right.
Arutmin, it's in the final feasibility process. We are not very sure which ought to be the end product. Separately, we are looking at solar. We are looking at hybrids. We are looking at electrification of our equipment as opposed to using diesel. We are looking at blue ammonia. We are looking at MEG. We are looking at olefins as downstreams, all starting from coal. So those are the various projects we have in mind. And we will make announcements, once we are sure that there is a project that we have decided upon, and we are very sure our restructuring is out of the way.
Okay. Okay, Pak Dileep. Thank you very much for the explanations. Next questions, specifically, there's related to the equity position of Bumi. I know that a lot of strategies has been done by management to improve.
Equity position.
Yeah, equity positions. There's a deficit on it. What are your view on this, Pak? How the management is trying its
when you say this, what do you mean?
Within the equity portions, there's in a financial report that also a balance of negative positions there, Pak.
Actually, if you look at our audited results, they show a net equity positive.
Okay, great.
We are at a net equity positive of around $500 or $600 million. And as we get back to profit, which we got back in profit in September 21, which should treble by the end of the year, that is at the end of 21, or maybe at least double, or maybe 2.5 to 3 times. It will further become more positive. And if you want to use your pencil and use a calculator for 2022 on the numbers that I have mentioned, which is 83 to 85 million tons, out of which 70% is exports, and you take an average price adjusted for quality of, let's say, $120, $125 per ton, and you take domestic and you adjust the 30% at for $70 for the quality, which is about 45, 46, as I mentioned. You can work out what the royalty is, and you already have the production cash cost.
Yeah.
You can pretty much get EBITDA.
Yeah.
And
okay.
you know that if you do that simple arithmetic, that the profit should be at least 2 or 3 times higher than 2021. But I can't give you that number. I have the number, but it's a back of envelope number. It's not something I want to put out in the public domain, but it is something your analysts might want to take a look at and do some arithmetic.
Okay, thank you, Pak Dileep, for the answers. Okay, Pak, one last question, Pak, in relates to the valuation. This is from Pak Krishna, if I'm not mistaken. So we're gonna show you one of the charts of peers comparison, Pak, Bumi against its peers, Indonesian stocks. Second.
So this is very difficult to read, I said.
The other one. Yeah. Yeah. So there's one question, but it relates to the
Is it
valuation.
possible to expand it or magnify?
Yeah, sure thing. We can zoom it. Zoom it in Zoom.
Yeah, okay, I got it.
Great. Yeah, you can see here, but in relates to the production as well as the resources, Bumi is the largest in Indonesia, as mentioned, but the valuation is currently at about 60% discount to the sector. And do you have any
This is on the share price, is it? This is on what? By PE?
By PE, Pak. PE, Pak.
Yeah.
Yeah. What your view on this, Pak? What message that you want to?
Well, I would say that
investors?
the past is the past, so don't look at the past and don't be colored by the past.
Right.
Because the last 2-3 years have been globally very challenging.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And one or two companies who did some wise diversifications outside the country maybe have gained. But of course, their royalty rates have been very low, so they've not been impacted.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But let's put it this way. If you look at the full year 21 EPS,
Mm-hmm.
the full year EPS now in 2020 was negative, so there was nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Up to June, there was nothing. Up to September, it is 67. Now, if you want to do 67 and pro rata it for the full year, which will be very, very conservative,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you can work out your EPS,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Which will be about 7 or 8 rupiah, or maybe 10 rupiah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, which PE do you want to take? You want to take Adaro, you're saying 6, it's actually 7.5.
Mm-hmm.
If you take 10 multiplied by 7.5, you're 75.
Mm-hmm.
If you take some of the others who are 23 and 16 for some reason,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, which one is the PE, which is very high?
Mm-hmm.
See, there are some which are in the region of 10, 15, 20, 25, more on sentiment and more on promo, you know, and on green announcements and on nickel announcements.
Yeah.
You know, they're not really on the fundamentals, really.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you want to take Bumi in the beta category, now that is the kind of category you should be looking at, because in the past, it's proven to be in that category. It's a beta down and it's a beta up.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, if you look at enterprise value, which is more relevant,
Mm-hmm.
because Adaro will discount, you know, will have a high market cap, but with cash, the enterprise value would be more or less the same.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If you compare enterprise value to enterprise value, we would be in the top 2 or top 3 category.
Mm-hmm.
It's the debt which is weighing us down. We were paying interest of $450 million in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
That dropped to $250 million. It's now dropped to less than 200. It has now dropped to nearer 150.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2 years' time, will be around 10 or 15.
Mm-hmm.
What will happen? That will add to the bottom line. So you have high coal. You have efficiencies, like I mentioned, on savings of $300-400 million that we are targeting.
Mm-hmm.
And you have volumes, which hopefully will be sustainable at 85-90, which will be higher.
Yeah.
And then you have contributions, and I think you are covering BRMS, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
While all of you think Dharma Henva is a bit of a mystery, I think it has potential as well. And we are invested there.
Yeah.
And the green will happen at the right time. But we know that there's no point over promoting green when we still have our debt issues to contend with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we are being conservative by not hyping.
Mm-hmm.
And we are not even telling investors that, listen, this is the true potential. Basically, I'm suggesting to you that use your pencil, use your calculator, use the market conditions, use the price, use the oil price, you know, use the savings that the company is talking about. Look at where BRMS is going and what it can contribute, and then figure out where it should be. Now, which company compares with us in that regard, with running projects like this and with future potential of the size of ours? where the family itself is involved in the management. And they want to make sure that in the next 2-3 years, they're in the driver's seat.
Right. Okay, thank you, Pak Dileep. Especially, I agree, and the Bumi right now is really too cheap to ignore, especially with
the market. I mean, one of the reasons why people are looking at the stock is that everything else is so expensive. I mean, it's just priced themselves out.
Exactly, I agree.
I mean, how much upside do they have? Next to zero.
Yeah.
I mean, if Bumi goes from 60 to 50, the downside is limited.
Yeah.
But from 50, if it goes to 80 or 100, like you said, it's a straight 200% gain.
Yeah.
Well, Dileep, I believe your share will be at least 120 or more.
Look, it's like
I believe that, thank you so much for today's presentation. I hope there are people making great money in Bumi, and they become the darling again because you have a strong partner, Chinese partner, Indian partner. What else do you want? Right? All the biggest consumption, and you have great customer base. So now the debt is also can be reduced. So I wish all my investors focus on Bumi again. It's still low before too late, even though there's a lot of dilution going on, right, Dileep?
Miming, I think you're right. The dilution aspect is certainly there. But that is actually helping balance the capital structure. That is helping us get rid of our interest cost, and that is helping the company become stable. But even then, even with the higher outstanding shares, the EPS is still going up from next to nothing. It can be next year significantly higher. And if we are significantly higher, I said you can even take a 50% discount on what you consider the best company. And you can still work out that number, whether it comes to 120 or not, maybe. Take a 50% discount on sentiment.
Okay, let's keep on promoting Bumi, right? And to all our retail investor and as well as institutional, we will make sure the coverage is more on Bumi now going forward, right? I think you're on the way of recovering. You have also BNMS that is going to do well. You face a lot of challenge, but you will make it and make it the darling of Indonesian stock again. Good luck, yeah, Dileep. And you have a new leader, young leader, dynamic, Aga, right?
Thank you for your good wishes.
Thank you.
But from my side, my role really is to just state the facts as they are, and then it's an investor decision. It is really their call.
Yes. Okay, Dileep, thank you so much. And any more questions?
I think that we finished all the questions, Bu Miming. Thank you so much, Bu Miming and Pak Dileep. Is there any closing statement from you, Pak, or it's enough?
From me?
Yeah.
Well, I wish to thank Ibu Miming and all Samuel colleagues, Maggie as well, who have taken so much pain to put all this together. I must confess that during the pandemic, we have not really had much of an opportunity to do face-to-face. But I'd be very happy actually to respond to any questions that investors may have, whether it's by email or whether it's via Samuel or whether it's by a call or even a Zoom, we can arrange that. And if some of you wish to visit the factory and to visit the coal mines, you're most welcome to come and see what a really true world-class operation it is. There is no other mine like that. And as I've said before to certain investors, that it's actually a Club Med with a coal mine next to the beach. Sometimes, if you're unlucky, you might even see a crocodile.
Certainly, very interesting, Pak Dileep. Okay, thank you so much for everybody, Pak Dileep, Bu Miming, and Pak Andry as our speakers, as well as all the attendees. And don't forget to follow Samuel Sekuritas Indonesia social media to watch the next event. You can follow from Instagram, Telegram, and also YouTube. Okay, lastly, I think we all gonna say thank you very much for joining us here today. and see you soon. Thank you, Pak Dileep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Dileep, Pak Nyoman. See you all.
And just one point I wanted to make, that my full team is here from IR. I have Mr. Ahmed Reza Vijaya. He's the chief economist, as well as the vice president for investor relations. You can see his face on the screen right now. He'd be very happy to interact with you all.
Okay.
I also have Rico Surya, who does all our PR and communications and interactions with the media. And one thing, of course, you would have noticed that there is hardly any negative news about Bumi in the press. And I think it's just that we've been transparent and we've been open and we have stated facts as they are.
Thank you, Pak Reza, for joining us here.
Thank you. Thank you, Pak Nyoman.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Okay, you can close this webinar. Bye.
Thank you.